back to finish the 18th chapter of The Sword and the Stone by T.H. White. So, Archimedes, the owl, and the wart are with the goddess Athena. They are both sitting on the palm of one of her hands, and she has just given the wart a dream of trees, which was not very exciting, I'm sorry to say. It is now time for the dream of stones. "It is the last dream she will give you," added Archimedes. "And this one goes at 2,000,000 years a second. You will have to keep your eyes skinned." Wart saw a darkness in front of him with lights in it. The dark was so dark that it was like lampblack, and the lights so light that the coldest blue fire of diamonds could not touch them. The harsh contrast between them made his eyes ache. He was looking at Sirius, actually, just as he had been looking at him a few hours before, but it took him quite a time before he realized that he was looking at a star at all. There was none of the mellow velvet which he had been accustomed to see through the Earth's atmosphere, but only the fierce emptiness of black and white. And besides this fact, the constellations were in different positions. It was a few 1,000,000,000 years ago, and all the shapes of the evening have altered since then. The nearest star, which looked the biggest for that reason, burned with a roar of terrible gases, and another star was coming toward it. You could see them surging on their endless paths into eternity, making their aimless courses across the universe with straight lines of remembered fire, like the meteors with which the Creator sometimes stitches together the weak seams of our dome, and bright darning needles suddenly darted out of the velvet by a finger on the other side. As the two stars came together, a huge mountain of flame was dragged out by attraction from each. When they were at their closest point, the top of the mountain broke off from the smaller star and streamed through the emptiness toward the bigger. Some of it reached its destination, but the bigger star was proceeding quickly on its way, and some of it was left behind. This part hung in space, lost to both its parent and its seducer, a whirling cigar of fire. Its mist of flame began to crystallize as they cooled, to turn into drops of water, as water does when it's cooled from steam. The drops took up a circular path of their own, spinning round the star from which they had been dragged. The wart found himself closer to the third drop. Its haze of incandescent worms crawled in and out of it, formed into funnels and whirlpools, crept over its round surface, sometimes leaped out into space, curled over and rained back. They were flames. The light died down far beyond, white to blue to red to a dim brown. It became a ball of steam. Out of this steam a smaller ball shot out. The first ball shrank and was a globe of boiling water. The water began to cool. The fires burned inside it. They convalesced the surface of the water, threw up great continents and islands of interior rock. The centuries were passing so quickly that even these continents seemed to bubble like porridge, as the volcanoes and mountains and earthquakes came and went. The unbridled furnace within was still unstable, and, till quite late in the dream, the globe did not always spin on the same axis, but lurched over sideways as some stress gave way inside. The lurches destroyed continents and made more. The wart found himself closer still. He was actually on the globe and facing an enormous cliff. At 2,000,000 years a second, the cliff's mountains moved. It was alive as the trees had been, and roared most dreadfully. It fell, it folded in on itself. It shoved itself along the surface of the globe, pushing a bow wave of its own folds for miles. Its great rock split and powdered, pouring stone torrents into the heaving sea. The sea itself grew tired of the mountain, made to sink down and be covered. Another convulsion threw up its remains again, streaming. Round the foot of the chastened mountain there lay its powder and its pebbles, great rocks worn smooth by the sea. The rocks themselves broke and were scattered, the sea always rolling, and rolling them together between its hands until the tiny fragments were often as round as their mother had been. The globe. A green scum formed over the sinking mountain, a haze of color which was still sometimes dipped under the water or lifted high above it as the earth undulated. The trees came, but their voices were quite drowned by the slower howling of the mineral world. Sorry, I keep adjusting the phone here. A green scum formed over the sinking mountain, a haze of color which was still sometimes dipped under the water or lifted high above it as the earth undulated. The trees came, but their voices were quite drowned by the slower howling of the mineral world, which twitched through the millennia like a dog's skin in sleep. "Hold fast," was what the rocks thundered. "Hold! Cohere!" But all the time they were broken apart, drawn down, and their hold broken. There was nothing to be seen of the mountain except a flat green plain which had some pebble on it. There were bits of the cliff which he had first watched. The dream, like the one before it, lasted about half an hour. In the last 3 minutes of the dream, some fishes, dragons, and such like ran hurriedly about. A dragon swallowed one of the pebbles, but spit it out. In the ultimate twinkling of an eye, far tinier than the last millimeter on a 6-foot rule, there came a man. He split up one pebble, which remained of all the mountain, with blows, then made an arrowhead of it and slew his brother. "Well, what?" said Kay in an exasperated voice. "Do you want all the rug? And why do you have to mutter so? You were snoring, too." "I don't snore," said the wart indignantly. "You do." "I don't." "You do. You snore like a volcano." "I don't." "You do." "I don't, and you snore worse." "No, I don't." "Yes, you do." "How can I snore worse if you don't snore at all?" By the time they had thrashed this out, they were nearly late for breakfast. They dressed hurriedly and ran out into spring. So I like the end of that chapter, just because I feel like, I mean, spoilers, Ward is King Arthur, of course, and him getting to see how the world was created is, I think, important to his legend as a king. We will find out very soon what happens in Chapter 19.